All right, John, it's been a couple of weeks since a train carrying hazardous materials derailed on the Ohio-Pennsylvania border.
And tonight, the cleanup at that site continues. And while that happens, a group of bipartisan lawmakers on Capitol Hill have crafted legislation that they say will help prevent future derailments.
Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Rachel Knapp spoke with Pennsylvania Senator Bob Casey on this topic. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Mike and Eva. Senator Casey is clearly frustrated with what has happened, and he says that this legislation is aimed to hold companies accountable, like Northern Suffolk, if they're for this mess, if they're not following code. But he says that this legislation is also aimed to help the local people, those who are impacted the most by all this.
In the weeks after the Norfolk Southern train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, just right across from the Pennsylvania border, which led to toxic chemicals spilling and a controlled burn of substances, a group of bipartisan congressional members are introducing legislation they say will prevent future rail disasters and hold companies accountable.
Rachel, if I had to summarize it in terms of what happened to the people of Ohio and Pennsylvania, Darlington, Pennsylvania, and Beaver County, we have got to be responsive to them in two ways. In the short run, making sure that every federal and state agency are helping the people in the community and doing everything they can under existing law to hold Norfolk Southern accountable.
Senator Bob Casey is co-sponsoring the Railway Safety Act of 2023 in response to the crash.
It'll improve safety requirements, especially for rail cars, rail companies transporting hazardous material. Sometimes that gets left out of the safety requirements. A lot more and tougher audits and inspections of rail companies and rail cars. Thirdly, it'll impose very tough civil penalties on these companies. Sometimes a company can have all kinds of violations, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company, and they pay a pittance.
Casey is pointing the finger at Norfolk Southern for this disaster, calling them the bad actor. But he says this bill will most importantly also focus on supporting communities impacted by rail disasters, like requiring first responders to have training to safely manage a potentially toxic and deadly crash scene.
We can't wait for some future policy debate. We've got to help them right now.
From the preliminary report from NTSB, they determined a wheel bearing was in the final stage of overheat failure before the crash, and the legislation that Casey and the other congressional members are pushing for will also address wheel bearing issues, and as well as mechanical failures, and really just kind of an overall just reform on oversight and accountability to all this. Mike, Eva, back to you.